Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Building World Peace, an interview series showcasing modern mystery school initiates from all walks of life who are working for the same mission of building world peace. I am your host. I am Ling. I am a guide, a teacher, and a ritual master in this ancient lineage of King Solomon with the modern mystery school. And today I'm super excited to introduce you to a fellow initiate, Matthew Koren. And I'm excited to share, I'll let him share his story with you all. Hi, Matthew.
Hi, everyone.
Nice to have you on here.
Thanks for having me, Ling.
Could you introduce yourself briefly to us?
Sure. I'm a guide and third step ritual master in the lineage of King Solomon, and I help conscious leaders scale up their businesses so they can live their higher purpose with freedom and ease.
Nice, and I can't wait to hear your story, like more of your story and your mission later on. So Matthew, for many people who are just watching building world peace videos for the first time, they may not know what the modern mystery school is. So could you explain to the viewers and the listeners what is the modern mystery school, and also what does it mean to you?
Oh, yes, thank you. Great question. The Modern Mystery School is an organization that is holding an ancient lineage of teachings called the lineage of King Solomon. And all of us, as the Modern Mystery School, are holding and teaching and connecting with others who are interested in living an empowered life. For me, and the reason why I even got started with the Modern Mystery School, which we'll get into a little bit later, but it's what I love about it, is that it's all about empowerment. We live in a world where there's a lot of victimhood and a lot of disempowering contexts and disempowering systems. And so the Modern Mystery School represents an organization that's actually trying to reverse that and create a community and create a world of peace, where empowered humans feel like they have control over, or they have the ability to influence how their life goes. And when humans are in control of, or in an influence over how their life goes, we have seen the world go a lot better. And so the Modern Mystery School, in all of us, that lives in all of us through the actions and the work that we're doing as each individual representative or worker within the Modern Mystery School, doing our work out there in the world and carrying these teachings out, is helping to express that world peace through our own individual experience of knowing thyself, and then in that knowing thyself, expressing our inner divinity outward to the world that we're in.
Thank you. That's a very detailed explanation. I could feel, I could feel the care and the love that you have for yourself as well as for the people that are watching this.
Yeah, there's lots of love. It's a community of light workers. It's a community of people that love life. And, I think you don't get that as much.
So Matthew, could you share with us your story? How did you get here to where you are right now?
Absolutely. Yeah, it all started a long time ago in a little 100-acre farm in Northeast Ohio where I grew up in the US. And I basically was very religious as a kid. My family was an Italian Catholic family. My mother was very religious. And I realized the importance of a spirituality in that setting. However, as I was growing up and coming out as a gay male in society, obviously I started to question some of the teachings of the traditional, in this case, Roman Catholic Church, but Christianity in general. And it had me go look at some other types of traditions or experiences of spirituality, or these concepts of God or source energy. And I came upon, at first, yoga, and ended up teaching myself yoga over a dial-up internet connection. So it was the whole, and then you would see an image of the head, and then you would see an image of the body. And basically, I was waiting for these images to download to see, like, oh, that's an asana, and that's how I hold that position. That's how I hold that position. So little did I know at that time I was actually studying a type of yoga called Ashtanga, because you have to hold the positions for multiple minutes at a time. And so as I was waiting for the dial-up internet connection, I was inadvertently holding these positions for a long time, waiting for it to show what it is that I needed to do. And after that, at a certain point, I decided that I was going to go really deep with my practice, and I had the experience of really pushing myself one one day, and as a, I don't know, I think it was like a 13-year-old, I had a spiritual awakening experience. And that awakening experience happened at the end of my yoga session, essentially, where I kind of fell lightly into this 45-minute sort of trance where I felt completely at one with the universe. There was no separation. I just kind of felt like I was both in my room and at the same time in the whole universe, experiencing no separation between that and the greater universe out there. And from that time on, I realized that, hey, there's a lot more going on here, and I want to discover that. I want to know more about it. And so as I continued to go through school and have my experiences, I had the opportunity to study Tibetan Buddhist religion, which is a sort of ancient mystery tradition that is very well versed at meditation methods to access the divine. And then, of course, I came across the Western metaphysical and mystical tradition in what we call the Hermetic lineage, in this case, the lineage of King Solomon. And at a certain point, I kind of had to choose, do I want to go more the Eastern route or the Western route? And in the Eastern route, there tends to be more of that idea of the mystic that goes off into the cave or the mountainside and meditates and just, throws away their worldly identities and families and things like that. And I knew I didn't want to do that. I also knew that it's very difficult to have this type of spirituality, but this type of relationship with divinity in the West, because we're householders, we're business holders, and we have, many different distractions, of course, in the West, not the least of which is our technology these days. And I wanted to really choose something that would get me there, but not have to sacrifice my ability to impact the world. And in that sense, and I chose the Western mystical tradition. So although I was already studying the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, I helped start a temple in Ohio in the Nyingma tradition, which is the oldest unbroken lineage in the Tibetan Buddhist religion. And I was deep in that. I decided around my late 20s that it was time to choose a specific lineage and go deep, because we can't get to the top of the mountain if we're kind of zigzagging to different traditions, is one piece of wisdom that I learned in those early years. And so making that choice was difficult, but I knew I needed to focus. And so at the time, I'd already been exposed to the Western mystical tradition. In fact, I got a little paper invitation. I was in a bookstore looking at a book on high magic, as you might do as a budding initiate, and I found a little paper invitation. Now, it wasn't to the Modern Mystery School. It was actually to go to a meeting for a mystery school in Vancouver, BC. And at the time, I didn't have the ability to do that because I was a teenager living in Ohio, and BC was very far away. But I kept that piece of paper so that when I came across the lineage again, this time in Portland, Oregon, where I was attending university, I realized, no, this is definitely something I want to pursue. And I was able to go to the Empower Thyself, which is our adept initiation program, and learn the foundations of who we are as a lineage and what we do and how we work. And then from there, of course, was able to go to Healers Academy and so on and so forth until I became a ritual master, which was a whole nother layer of the teaching, which we can get into. And now, a decade later, I'm a guide in the tradition. Now I'm teaching the Empower Thyself. I say facilitating the Empower Thyself program and helping others find themselves through these teachings and through the empowerment work of the lineage of King Solomon.
Wow. I was like having goosebumps through hearing your story for the first time. Uh, that is so cool. That is so cool. And there's many, many things I want to bring up. One of the first thing is, it's interesting when you were talking about, oh yeah, I was trying out these two paths, the Eastern and the Western. And the Eastern is more mystic, right? Which is very aligned with, I guess, a stereotypical um, Eastern meditation, tradition that we see even in media. Um, and so versus the Western lineage, or mainly the modern mystical, right? Because I don't know about the other lineage; they are not open to us, so we don't know. But at least a we have something that actually works for, first of all, for the Western lifestyle, works for the the Western mind that is very like I know I'm Asian,
Yeah,
but I do,
the minds are very different.
yeah, very different.
And I lived in China for a year. I had three goals in college. One was to graduate, the other was to speak a foreign language, and the third was to live abroad for a year. And I studied Chinese, so I lived in Beijing for a year. And that was where I was able to actually go visit Tibet. And I went to the Potala Palace, and I went and actually studied and worked with some monks over in Tibet as well. And so I saw the lifestyle and I saw the culture, in Thailand, where I've done my Vipassana meditation retreats before. um, Temple service is mandatory. So just like in some countries there's mandatory military service, in Thailand there's mandatory temple service. So and it's for males only. But in the male, as a budding young adult, there you would go serve for I think it's 1 to 3 years actually in the temple in Thailand. And so it's just part of the culture of growing up there. And in that way, it's a much different context for what study in a temple looks like. We just don't have that context, that same context over here in the West. And there's research that's done on the psychology side, because my degrees and my background's in cross-cultural communication and psychology. I've looked at and I've seen reports and research where the actual way the mind is structured, and you can kind of look at language for that. Chinese, as an example, is a very pictorial language. So when you're speaking Chinese, you're gonna actually think differently than when you're speaking a Romance language like Italian, Spanish, or kind of
Yeah, yeah,
amalgamation of
yeah.
all languages. English, English has French and German and all these other languages in it. But in English, you're going to be, because you're talking that way, because you're speaking that way, you're going to think very differently. And so there's a very real brain difference, brain structure and physiology difference between the Eastern mind and the Western minds. And thus, it's, I think, no surprise that we have different spiritual traditions or different philosophies or ways to access these same kind of universal concepts, because they are universal. No matter where you're at in the world, you can take advantage of these teachings, right? But sometimes it's easier when it's presented one way than the other.
Yeah, that's so cool. I speak Japanese too. So yeah, like when I speak Japanese, I'm like a different person compared to when I speak Vietnamese or English. It's
Exactly. I have a very different personality as a Chinese speaker than I do an English speaker.
and it just comes out. It's not. I'm not even trying. It's just the energy of the language, I guess.
No, it's in the structure of the language. And the word is very powerful. We teach, Saint John, the Gospel of John in the Bible is a very mystical chapter, and that actually made it into the King James version of the Bible. And it begins with, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God." And that's just the beginning of a very metaphysically heavy text that goes into many concepts. And the idea that our word is power is really one of the ways to look at what the lineage of King Solomon and the mystery school traditions are doing. Is they're reigniting the power that we have just in what we're communicating and how we're being, and what we express, what we are able to articulate. Sometimes is part of it is part of the power that we have to convey over the world.
Yeah, and then some of the more like I know the Mr. School, but also guides. In the Mr. School, we do a lot of work with redefining words, right? Because that's for exact reason, because words are so powerful. Like what is a ritual, what is magic, what is sacrifice. All these words have been, a lot of them have been watered down or even have been completely misdirected. So yeah, I understand that. uh,
Exactly.
and one thing that was interesting, so you said you were on two paths and then you learned early on that you have to commit. That's a very wise decision. Could you maybe share more about about that? Because I know there, especially maybe the younger folks may not want to commit to anything. Like because the path may be too restrictive. So if you could elaborate on some of that part of your story.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for asking. If you're one of those young people, this story is for you. So, as I mentioned, I helped start a Tibetan Buddhist temple in Ohio. My mentor at the time was the person responsible for bringing over the lineage holder in this particular tradition to Ohio to consecrate the temple. And once they were ready to do that, once this teacher came over and lineage holder, he came with a very traditional retinue of monks, which means he came with like 30 monks. And one of those was called a tuku, which is an embodied ascended master, someone who is considered an ascended master but is in the physical. And my mentor arranged for me to have a one-on-one audience with this wisdom keeper. And of course, I had no interest in doing that because I was very intimidated. But she pushed me into the room, shut the door, and I found myself in this office with this Tibetan tulku, which is an incredible opportunity. And also, I was kind of scared. I had no idea what I was going to even talk about. And indeed, I sat there for a long time in silence. And, looking at this very kind of pristine figure that was kind of in a slightly unorganized office. So it was this really interesting dichotomy being there. And I was able to finally come to some words to articulate what was going on for me in the moment. And I figured I might as well say something to take advantage of the opportunity. And I don't remember what I said exactly, but when I was done, I fell silent, and he kind of, meditated on it for a second, and then he finally said, "Hey, pick up that article near you and read the first couple paragraphs." So I did, and the article was about that climb up the mountain and how you're never going to get to the top of the mountain if you're kind of constantly taking these detours. And the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence, sort of analogy. And so he mentioned that it's really important. He mentioned that it's really important to choose one tradition and go deep. And at that moment, I was 18 years old, and I took his concepts and I took that advice, and I very promptly set it aside and spent the next 10 years trying every single tradition I possibly could, because there was no way I was going to choose one until I was absolutely sure that that was the one that I wanted to do, because I knew what that meant was I was going to spend the rest of my life studying and working in that, and really, confronting all the things that were hard about that, because this is not about feel good. Sometimes I kind of, kind of put woke culture on a little bit of a chair and say, is this really what we want people? It's not about feeling good or it must feel right, because sometimes it doesn't feel good to encounter your negative ego. Sometimes it doesn't feel good to grow beyond your boundaries. In fact, our whole brain and body physiology is wired against, pushing up against some of those boundaries, and our ability to will ourselves through that in a way that is safe, using the techniques of the mystery tradition and the mystery school, is what helps us expand and evolve our consciousness, right? So, I can't credit that wisdom of knowing that even after 10 years, I, knew I had that in the back of my mind, and I knew when it was time for me to choose. I can't credit, I can't say that that was my wisdom, but it was definitely something that I kept with me and remembered for that whole decade when I was trying to choose, when I was exploring basically, and tasting all the different traditions, if you will, and then finally it came time to choose, and I ended up, at that time it was still the Nyingma tradition of the Tibetan Buddhist school, or it was going to be the lineage of King Solomon. And of course, I am here now as a guide and a sort of lineage holder, in the sense, not a lineage holder, but I'm responsible for maintaining the purity of the lineage as a guide in the lineage of King Solomon. And so my work is to both maintain the purity of those teachings and help others see that there is a door to walk through, and if they choose so, they can walk through that door.
That's really cool. And I mean, yeah, you were 18, right? So of course you're gonna explore. It's okay. It's part of your experience here on Earth, and so it's I think that was amazing. Like you got some wisdom imparted on you. You you and you give yourself time and space to ponder on it, to experience for yourself, and then from a place of like a more more with more being more informed and with more discernment, you can make a decision. And it is a life, I mean, well, we're saying this right because for you, you're very serious about the work, so if for you it is a lifelong commitment. So I see a lot of honor in that. And I hope this also helps younger folk, or help people out there who are having trouble committing to anything, but especially most importantly committing to themselves and to their own betterment. um, to remember that, yeah, if you keep zigzagging and not commit, if you're not committed to anything, you won't get anything done. um,
Yeah, and the reality is many people could come in and touch the teachings of this school and then go on to do other things, and that happens a lot. We're full of people that are kind of here for a little bit, they get what they need and they move on, and we're full of people that have stayed here for a while, and so we're available for all of that. As a universal tradition, we definitely have something of value to everyone that walks through the door, and if that's core to what they need and core to their purpose, we hope that they stay with us. If they find that there's something else that they need to go explore, of course they're free to do that as well. And we have many people that come back to the school after a while knowing what they know and having the experiences that they've had.
It's awesome. Um, one more thing I wanted to ask about your story is, so you were Catholic and yet Roman Catholic, and yet, and also you're the LGBT community, um, and yet, like at 18 or even earlier, you were able to move on to a different tradition so fast, and oh, so fast is my own judgment of it. I don't know. Was there any issues for yourself in like just trying to reconcile these different religions, or was it just an easy decision because you already know what you need and stuff like that?
Well, it was an interesting journey because I knew that I had a personal relationship with God, but then also as a very religious person, and having a very active prayer process. But at the same time, I knew that there was this kind of misalignment with the like politics of the church, and frankly, I don't really have a lot of patience for politics because I know what's true for me and what I want to have happen, and what that could potentially look like. And so, I knew that there was something out there for me that didn't have that sort of tension. And of course, in the lineage of King Solomon, it's not a political or a religious oriented institution. It's really about universal knowledge and applying that for ourselves, because we are the ones that are seeking our own wisdom and knowledge from inside. And really, the lineage of King Solomon and the tools that we provide as a lineage are about redirecting us as individuals back to our internal wisdom so we can source it from within. That was the perfect ingredients for what I needed to fully express myself as a divine eternal being in this kind of limited flesh body that we find ourselves in. And so I was able to reconcile my relationship with God through ironically, a non-religious teaching that acknowledged there was this greater source energy out there that we can all tap into and have access to. Which, when you think about it, Christ as a person, or even as a concept, depending on how you relate to it, is about that Christ consciousness or energy that is above and beyond just the human, and in that way demonstrated that we can be both human and goddess in the flesh, and that there's ways to access our inner divinity and our inner infinity through spiritual practice.
Wow, Matthew, thank you for sharing your story. I can't imagine how it's must have been like, and also how it may be, how it is like for you, but also for others, to be gay and religious, especially in the church, with what I know of religion at this point. So, thank you for sharing the story, and to those who are watching or listening to this, I hope you, and maybe struggling with this, I hope you can see that there is, there are people out there who have have been able to um, live as who they are and expanded way beyond what they were taught in their childhood.
Yeah, one of the biggest innovations in this regard, I think, that the mystery school has done is it's removed that mediator between you and that divine source. Whatever word you use to describe it, we use God in the mystery school, and there's many ways to say it: source, energy, universe, whatever. But the fact of the matter is here that there does not have to be any mediator between you and that source, that energy. And the whole point of the school and the teachings is to get you connected 100% in alignment with that universal energy, that source, so that you can feel divinely sourced and empowered to accomplish all the beautiful and amazing things that we're here to do as human beings, as creator God beings here on this earth, to affect world peace in the case of the mission of the school, but also to know ourselves and to accomplish our own personal mission.
Nice. Well, you just touched on the topic of the interview, so it's a good segue. Um, Matthew, you're here because you're working on world peace. So, what does world peace look like to you?
That's an awesome question, and I love that we get to go there. So thanks for again, Ling, for putting on this interview series. For me, world peace is so important because of what it makes available for people, which is to have the expansiveness and the time and the emotional resilience, because they're able to be able to have a relationship with their divinity. A lot of the way the world is set up right now, it causes a lot of strife, or there is a lot of strife that is stressful and creates diversions from that practice of being with ourselves, being in silence and meditation, and really connecting with our divinity. And so that's, my personal mission is to create communities where people can thrive and grow. And part of that thriving is in that emotional security, or psychological safety is a word that's being thrown around right now. And that's all very important to people feeling like they can pursue their goals and their dreams. When you're in a place where you can't pursue your goals and your dreams because there's violence or there's strife or there's just unpredictability, it makes it hard for humans to be fully who we really are. And who we really are is much more than oftentimes what we do or fall into of our own devices. Oftentimes we need mentors and guides and um, exemplars to help inspire us towards a higher goal. And if anything, that's what, however you want to relate to God, real or not, whatever you think about that, even just having the concept of something greater than you draws you towards that greatness. And so, you know, as a school, we have our own teachings around the nature of the universe and why humans are in it, which you can uncover and discover for yourself in the Empower Thyself program. But one of the ways that I'm getting at that, one of the ways that I embody my personal mission of creating communities where people can thrive or grow is creating these light center communities in different areas. I started one in Portland, Oregon. I'm starting one in Fort Lauderdale right now. And the one in Fort Lauderdale is called Temple Medicine. And at Temple Medicine, we're creating vibrant cultures and thriving communities and creating abundance by consciously creating these conditions that are conducive to an empowered life, both individually and collectively. And so Temple Medicine is this reminder that you are an interbeing, that you're living within a culture, within a social structure that is growing and evolving and thriving together. And when we work together, we can achieve these higher level results. So originally, I used temple in the medicine, but sometimes people are like, wait, is it religious? It's not religious, but it is, drawing on that pattern of the temple originally as a place of worship, and also traditionally a place of commons, a place where people came together in community. And it was a place of equitable access, of equitable use. It was also a place, of course, to engage with your spirituality and do that with everyone in your community. And so, yeah, there were special rituals or rites or um, uh, patterns around meeting the needs of the local community, stewarding resources, developing leaders, dealing with conflict and transgressions in a compassionate way. And indeed, that space was medicine for the people. Temple medicine is about providing that space again in a secular way, a sort of modern day temple of healing and empowerment rather than a religious one. And that helps us to embody and engage some, like I said, higher level goals. So in order to make a thriving community, we know that, for example, certain structures that exist currently are not sustainable. And so we talk a lot at Temple Medicine about regenerative community, which is not my own words. This is research and work that's been done by many people before me. But one of the ideas that I really want to embody and express through Temple Medicine is this idea that we can pursue other forms of capital, not just economic capital, but also spiritual capital, social capital, living capital, like the actual resources we need to support life, as well as, of course, environmental capital, for example. So Temple Medicine is about helping us understand what are all the different ways that we can interact with this world that go beyond like this economic incentive, because everyone needs money to live, but how do we do that pursue that in a way that actually enlivens and creates resiliency and um, and sustainability. So all of this is a sort of structure that I believe will be really helpful and indeed critical for creating thriving communities. Because for me, world peace is about creating thriving communities. We can't have world peace if people are struggling for, their basic needs, if they're struggling to connect and feel like they belong. And so temple medicine is about meeting that mission of world peace through creating thriving communities, through creating communities of belonging, through creating an organization and structures through the people that are creating resiliency and in that way creating psychological safety for people in these very trying times. I think everyone would agree it's been a very stressful couple of years, and in a sense, you might you might say that this change is going to only continue.
Cool. Thank you, Matthew. You already answered one of my other questions, which is how are you working on how are you contributing to your vision of world peace? Um, Matthew, another question is: was there a moment that you realized that world peace was possible, or was it always been something that you believed in?
I think I'm pretty lucky in that I have always had a very stable emotional backdrop in my life. Um, some people might argue I've had traumatic experiences. I don't. I kind of see it as always. I'm an eternal optimist. Let me put it that way. And so, for me, I've always really believed that world peace is possible because I've seen lots of good things in my life, and I've seen how good people can be. But I think the strongest reason that I believe world peace is possible and that I knew that it was possible came when I realized that in myself that I could change, that I could transform myself. Because it's really easy, I think, as someone who has no access to transformation teachings, no access to mystery school teachings, no access to even empowerment in any sort, it's really easy to assume that it's always going to be this way. And indeed, I think most of the world relates to things like it's always going to be this way. Well, my brother is always going to be this way. My mom's always going to be that way. My job's always going to be this way because they don't have the experience of transformation. But what we get to do as initiates, any initiate, not just guides in the lineage, but any adept, is able to say, wow, I can actually transform my environment. I can transform my health. I can transform my mind because I have tools to do that help me do that. And when you realize that you can transform yourself, you realize that that's actually also possible for other people. They may need a little help. We all need a little help. But it's no longer the world is this way, that actually there's other options, that there's other possibilities. And there may be truth in the matter that things are dangerous or things are traumatic or things are, um, discouraging or painful. All that is true. And we have options. Like we have other options. We can make choices now that impact our future. You know, Responding to the past only creates more of that in the future. But I think what we learn in the mystery teachings is to really place our focus, our intention on the now, because this is the place of greatest power. This is the place of greatest leverage to impact the future. And so that way, you know, by learning and going through the process of this transformational work in the mystery school, particularly, I'll say, this would be a great plug for the Kabbalah Ascension program, which is, I think, one of the hidden gems of the school. We talk about all these different things, but the Kabbalah is a really important gem. That's a way to get at that transformation and see what's potentially possible for people.
Yeah, I relate with the things that you said so much. For me too, that was when I realized that I could change. That means everyone else could change, right? It's not like a big secret, and I'm not any more special than anyone else. Um, yeah, yeah, and also yes, the Universal Kabbalah Ascension program. It kind of goes by many name variations, but the Universal Kabbalah. And it's so amazing. I could do it over and over again until I don't know until the day I
And
die.
people do.
Yeah, right. It's for the viewers and listeners. It's 10 different ways that you or more like 10 different areas that you may be limited at this moment. Yeah, so it's highly recommended. So Matthew, for whoever's watching this video, this interview, and they are also maybe they are stuck or maybe they're struck. They know that they're here to do something, to contribute to making it the world a better place, but maybe they're struggling with something or stuck in some ways. What are some words of wisdom that you would give to them, impart to them the same way that you got the wisdom at 18?
I don't know if I can recreate the wisdom of an ascended master in the flesh, but I'll try. Um, a lot of energy is coming in right now, and I think the message that is being shown here is around really understanding that you have the capacity to change even when you don't feel the power inside of you, and that the difference between feeling powerful and feeling totally out of control is a very fine line. And the difference is made in your will to create something better for yourself. And the issue that we run into in society is that we're told from every direction that we're not good enough, that we're not smart enough, that we're not pretty enough, that we're not enough. And the reality is you were always enough, and you always had everything inside of you that you needed to create whatever kind of world that you wanted to create, because all that you need is the power of your word. And when you discover the power of your word, and through things like the mystery school teachings, discover new ways to use your word to create miracles in your life, that you will start seeing the world for the magic that it is. Because the world is responding to the words that you use. And that doesn't take anything but you thinking and meditating really clearly about what are the words that are going to bring me to manifest the dreams that I'm here to create.
Ooh, thank you. I got that too. uh, one thing. So you mentioned the wheel, right? Like I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but like the difference between feeling out of control and feeling empowered to change. It's a decision, but it's also there's that will to do good, or will to change, and this is why personally for me, I talk so much about life activation, and especially empower thyself, because in empower thyself, you strengthen your will to do better, to better yourself, right? That's the whole point of empower thyself. You strengthen that will, that muscle, because it's a muscle you have to learn. So yeah, thank you for that message, Matthew. and
Thank you.
and for whoever, for those who are watching or listening to this, they love you, they want to check out temple medicine or anything else that you have to offer, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I encourage everyone to come visit us in person at Temple Medicine in Fort Lauderdale. You can find a calendar of events at templemedicine.center. The website is templemedicine.center. And if you really like the kind of words that I'm saying and want to work with me, you can either find me there, you can find me at my own website called spiritintransition.com, spiritintransition.com, or you can email me at evolve@spiritintransition.com.
All right, thank you so much, Matthew. It has been so nice chatting with you, and
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for this work, and thank you for your time and for doing this effort. I mean, I know it's a tremendous effort to get together these interviews and go through all the work that it takes to get these published. And so, honor to you, Ling, and thank you for all of your service.
thank you. It's an honor to be able to present you and all the gods and goddesses who are working on this mission. All right. Bye, Matthew, and bye, everyone. I'll see you in the next interview. And of course, I'll add all of Matthew's contact information in the description. So check him out there. Bye.